Alright, let's not beat around the bush here. You know what Breaking Bad is, I know what Breaking Bad is, it needs no introduction. But for you disgusting, uncultured swines watching this who don't know what it is, it's about a cancer man who makes meth to get money and wacky hijinks ensue. In all seriousness, Breaking Bad is a fantastic show that, despite being 15 years old at the time of me releasing this video, is still being discussed, analyzed, and memed to oblivion to this very day. And I'm here to give my 2 cents on how great the show is. I'll be making a video of every season of the show, and starting with season 1, I'm going to rank and review every single episode of the show and give my own personal opinions on what I like and maybe dislike about each and every one. I'm going to be putting them all into a tier list from S tier to F tier, and by the end you'll have my official ranking from top to bottom. These are all my own personal opinions, and there might be some controversial picks, so if there's an episode that you like that's rated low on the list, don't say I didn't warn you. Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. I still remember being absolutely floored by this episode the first time I saw it. Like, I heard this was a good show, but man, I was not expecting it to be that good. Like, it starts off with a pair of pants flying in the air, followed by crashing the RV to Walt freaking out and having a near panic attack to him going out in the middle of the road with only a green button up and tighty whities pointing a gun at what he assumes to be the police, and then intro. And that's the first 4 minutes! So basically, Walter White has turned 50 years old and is going through a midlife crisis. He works as a chemistry teacher and gets paid so little that he has to work at a car wash just to make ends meet. And he still doesn't make enough money. To make matters worse, he's diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer and is given 2 years to live. Oh no! But after finding out about the wonderful world of meth distribution, Walt teams up with former chemistry student Jesse Pinkman to make meth. But things take a zany turn once Jesse talks to Emilio in Crazy 8. After the debacle, Walt thinks it's all over and is ready to go down with a fight. But it turns out that it's just a bunch of firefighters ready to fight some fire. Walt goes home to play Battleship with Skylar, and bam, that's the episode. While it wasn't as amazing as I remember it being, the episode is still really good, and it's surprising considering it's the pilot episode. Pilot episodes have a shocking amount of pressure on them. It not only has to introduce the cast of characters, their motives, and their personalities, and demonstrate what the show is even about in the first place, but it also has to be good. Good enough so that audiences will want to come back for more. A lot of pilots are either okay and or are so different from the original show that they feel like a different show altogether, but it's almost like this show cheated. It feels like it knew exactly what it wanted to be from the get-go, aside from a few differences here and there. Like, the show has a lot more comedic moments than it does in the later seasons, and a lot of the characters feel slightly different from what their future selves would turn out to be. Like, Marie is still an annoying bitch, but she feels a lot more toned down and less energetic. Also, it's amazing how sympathetic Walt is in this episode. I actually felt bad for him in this episode and was rooting for him, which, if you've watched this entire show, is a very odd feeling to have. Overall, I give this episode an A tier. An amazing start to the season and the series as a whole. Season 1, Episode 2, Cats in the Bag. This episode takes place right where we left off, with Walt and Skylar finishing off their game of Battleship. It was so intense that Walt spent the night on the bathroom floor butt-ass naked. The rest of this episode shows the aftermath of the previous episode, with one guy dead and another guy not so dead. Walt is tasked with killing Crazy 8, but can't bring himself to do it. Meanwhile, Jesse is tasked to look for materials to dissolve the bodies with, but can't bring himself to do it. Also, Skylar is getting mad suspect with Walt, so she confronts him at the hospital. He tells her a half-truth, saying that he's blazing it up with his home dog Jesse, and tells her to
climb down out of my ass.
Skylar is reasonably distraught and eventually tracks down Jesse's address. This episode is great, and for my first slightly controversial opinion of the video, I think it's slightly better than the pilot episode. Overall, this episode is also getting an A tier. Season 1, Episode 3, And the Bags in the River. Walt and Jesse are cleaning up the consequences of last night's Campbell's Chunky Tomato Soup fight, while Walt has flashbacks of his past, detailing the origins of Gray Matter, a company that we'll be learning about in just a few episodes to come. Skylar asks Marie about what a stoner character would act like for a supposed short story she's writing, but Marie takes that as her implying that she thinks Walt Jr. is doing weed, when in reality Walt is doing weed, but in reality Walt isn't blazing the weeds, but is instead blazing up the weeds in the Albuquerque desert. You understand what I'm saying? Well, it's fine if you don't, because there's something I don't understand either. Why of all people would Skylar ask this sort of question to Marie? I mean, like, she's known Marie for years. She had to have known that asking her this type of "I'm just asking for a friend" question is going to make Marie spread the rumor like wildfire. Which she does, causing Marie to call Hank to give Walt Jr. a talking to. Which he does. Meanwhile, Walt finds out that Jesse told Crazy 8 everything about him, and they have a reasonable discussion about the matter.
You didn't follow my instructions!
Oh, well, Heil Hitler, bitch!
Ending with Jesse leaving to the motel, leaving Walt to kill Crazy 8. Walt tries to find any other reason not to kill him, but his mind is in a rock and a hard place. He's about to deliver some food when... After this, he gets some food and a beer for Crazy 8 and actually has a really nice talk with him. When I first watched this episode, I thought this scene was kind of pointless and boring. But I was a fucking idiot back then because I had no idea what was about to happen. Walt decides he's going to let him free, throws away the food, and realizes something. He opens back up the trash can, grabs the broken plate, and... Oh my god! Yeah, it doesn't go well for Crazy 8, making him Walter White's first of many, many murders. This episode was way more amazing than I remember it being. I love the fight between Walt and Jesse, the scene with Walt talking to Crazy 8, the scene with Walt no longer being able to talk to Crazy 8. You know what? I'm gonna do it. This episode gets the honor of being the first S tier on our list. Wow, 3 great episodes in a row. Let's see if it continues. Season 1, Episode 4, Cancer. This episode was a lot better than I remember it being. The episode begins with Hank giving a meeting about the disappearances of Crazy 8 and Emilio, along with the meth they found in the previous episode, which is 99.1% pure. Later, Walter White commits one of the worst crimes he's committed in the entire series, burning a full rack of chicken. Walt recalls the day he and Skylar met, and Skylar breaks down crying, causing Walt to admit to the family that he has cancer. Man. After a family meeting, Walt and Skylar haggle about chemo and how one of the best doctors in the country will be working on Walt. But while Walt is having a hard time with money, Jesse is having a hard time with not letting the meth demons kick in. He has a panic attack thinking a biker gang is gonna beat him up, but in reality it turns out to be something even worse. Evangelists. Jesse runs to his family's house, where it's revealed that his brother's academically talented, and we get a bit of backstory about Jesse's relationship with his family. It doesn't turn out well though, as the cleaning maid finds one of Jesse's jubilant joints, and kicks him out of the house. On the flip side of things though, it turns out the meth is starting to sell like hotcakes, and Jesse meets up with Walt at his house to give him his share.
Get the hell off my property.
What? I'm just saying.
And don't come back.
This goes well. Walt is starting to lose hope in the cancer treatments due to the financial burden he fears it'll leave on his family, and Walt Jr. gives him some encouraging advice.
Then why don't you just fucking die already? Just give up and die.
Then Walt blows up a car. Executive producer Vince Gilligan. This episode is honestly really good. Not as good as the previous episodes, but a nice one nonetheless. We get some backstory about Jesse, we begin Hank's ultimate quest to find the evil meth dealer of Albuquerque, and we get the big reveal about Walt's cancer. Also, Walt blows up a car. A few slow scenes here and there, but some great scenes as well, like Walt blowing up a car. Solid episode. I'm giving it a B tier, teetering on an A tier. Season 1, Episode 5, Gray Matter. Walt and Skylar attend a birthday party held by Elliot and Gretchen, who both currently run a company named Gray Matter. It's revealed that Elliot and Walt initially founded the company together, but Walt left for reasons we'll get into later. Walt has a talk with Elliot, and while Walt talks about his sick KD ratio in Valorant, Elliot offers Walt a job at the company and even offers to pay for his treatments. Walt rejects his offer, realizing Skylar had told Elliot about his cancer, and that he sees it as some sort of insult because of how much more successful Elliot became despite Walt co-founding the company. Meanwhile, Jesse tries to find a job with no luck, and meets his friend Badger along the way. Oh yeah, this episode introduces Badger, one of Jesse's closest friends. He also happens to be the best character in the entire show! Yeah! Oh my god! Badger! Oh my god! Anyways, Jesse decides to partner up with Badger and they cook some dope-ass meth together. But Jesse believes the meth to not be dope nor ass, which enrages Badger. They both end up having a big fight, and Jesse leaves Badger in the middle of nowhere. During this, Walt has a family meeting, and it goes about as well as you'd think it'd go.
You're a pussy.
Walt makes an empowering speech about not wanting to spend the rest of his life miserable, but after sleeping on it, decides to go forward with the treatment. Later, he gets a call from Gretchen, and Walt lies saying that his insurance is covering his treatments, despite the offers he's gotten from them. We also get some pretty vague backstory on Walt and Gretchen's past, and Walt asks Jesse if he wants to cook again. This episode's alright, not the strongest, but not terrible either. Obvious high point is that Badger is introduced to the show, and the intervention scene is also really good. This one's a solid B tier, bordering on a C tier. Season 1, Episode 6, Crazy Handful of Nothin. Walt and Jesse come to a deal on their meth operation. Walt cooks while Jesse looks for people to sell it to. Walt also asks Jesse for no more bloodshed, a statement that Walt will follow for the rest of the series. Walt also begins his long trail of lies to Skylar, stating that he already received the check from Gretchen and Elliot. There's also a significant amount of Walt puking in this episode, but luckily my man Hugo comes in clutch, cleaning the stalls for Walt and even giving him some gum. Hugo's a real one. Later in the episode, Jesse finds out Walt has cancer, noticing the burn on Walt's chest. He finishes the batch and sells it on the streets, making $2,600 total. Realizing this is nowhere near enough money to pay for his treatment, Walt gets angry at Jesse. What's he supposed to do? Take a check from some incredibly wealthy colleagues? That's for pussies! Walt tells Jesse to find a distributor, and Jesse decides to make a deal with Tuco, which goes horribly wrong, nearly killing him in the process. Meanwhile, Hank finds out that the mask his group found in their investigation of the evil meth dealer of Albuquerque is property of Walt's high school, which he promptly investigates. He finds a bunch of missing inventory in Walt's lab and warns him of a potential meth man running about the school. Hank arrests Hugo on suspicion of stealing the equipment after running a background check and finding weed in his car. Obviously he didn't, but he's still taken to prison anyways. Rest in peace, Hugo. You were only in one episode, but damn it, you left a hole in my heart that can never be filled. Later, Walt arranges a meeting with Tuco himself, going under the pseudonym Heisenberg, and asks for $50,000. Tuco initially laughs at him, asking why Walt would bring in another pound of meth for him, even after what happened to Jesse. But he got one part of that wrong.
This is not meth.
Walt blows up the office, gets the money, and books it home. This episode is awesome. It's a bit of a turning point for Walt's character. You can feel him getting increasingly more confident, and his pride and ego is starting to swell a bit. Like, at this point, you can still justify a lot of his actions, even if you disagree with the way he goes about things. This episode also introduces Walt's beautiful bald head, along with his Heisenberg persona. We got a lot more Skinny Pete in this episode as well. I love you, Skinny Pete. And the ending scene is amazing, of course. This is getting a solid S tier for me. Top of the list so far. Season 1, Episode 7. A no rough stuff type deal. Walt attends a meeting with Skylar concerning the stolen lab equipment from Walt's class, along with the firing of Hugo. Rest in peace, Hugo. Walt decides to distract his wife with secret tips on how to find the destroyer and battleship, and they end up playing an enthralling round later after the meeting. Later, we find out Jesse is trying to sell his house, and Walt tells him that he struck up a deal with Tuco. Jesse doesn't believe him at first, but Walt explains how he and him will be making £2 a week for Tuco every week, which infuriates Jesse, explaining how getting the pseudo for that amount is near impossible. Nevertheless, the two of them meet Tuco that week, but they come £1.50 short, angering Tuco. Tuco gives the two of them $17,000, but Walt not only asks for the full amount, but offers to make him £4 the next week, again infuriating Jesse. Walt comes up with an idea to substitute the pseudo and the meth, causing Jesse to say one of the most culturally significant phrases in all of history.
Yeah, Mr. White. Yes, science.
Walt leaves Jesse to find the tools and ingredients for their operation. Later, we see Holly's baby shower, where Skylar opens up a gift from Marie, which turns out to be a $500 golden white tiara. Walt later talks to Skylar about how he'll be going to a sweat lodge for his cancer treatments, when in reality he'll be cooking more meth with Jesse. Walt realizes they don't have any methylamine, so he concocts a plan with Jesse to break into a building and steal a barrel of it in this amazing scene. Meanwhile, Skylar tries to return the tiara to the place Marie bought it from, but they accuse her of stealing it, so she gets out of the situation by pretending to go into labor. This is where Skylar peaks as a character. She tries confronting Marie about it, but she denies stealing it. Walt and Jesse try to cook in the RV again, but it decides it's not really feeling up to it right now, so they cook it in the basement during an open house. Shockingly, they manage to get away with it, but it's still really tense. Later, they sell the meth to Tuco and get a sizable amount of cash, and this is where we're introduced to the show's iconic blue meth. Tuco's partner says something that rubs him the wrong way, so Tuco takes a reasonable approach to the situation and punches the shit out of him. This episode is really good. Even though the Skylar subplot was kind of unnecessary, it doesn't take up too much time, and the rest of the episode is awesome. I'm giving this last episode an A tier. An amazing end to an amazing season. Thank you all for watching this video. My current plan is to release one of these videos once a month, so that by the time I get to the end of the Breaking Bad universe, I'll have made one video for each month of the year. But anyways, thank you all for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in Season 2.